Hare Krishna, dear devotees, welcome back to the daily readings of Srila Prabhupada's books, right here in the live studios at Nilachal, Hereford, in the house of the family of my doctor, Chakradari Prabhu, and his better half, Rajlakshmi, Devi Dasi, and their two beautiful children. I'm going to suspend all talk before we start because we're on text 147 and everybody is telling me we should finish the book. We've only got 10 texts to go, but these purports, commentaries are so long and so beautiful, but I've made a vow I'm going to finish the book tonight. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from the 7th chapter of the second part of Sri Brhad Bhagavatamrta, beginning with text 147. We're at the end of the book. Relish. Among all persons on earth, these cowherd men, among all persons on earth, these cowherd women alone have actually perfected their embodied lives, for they have achieved the perfection of unalloyed love for Lord Govinda. Their pure love is hankered after by those who fear material existence, by great sages, and by ourselves as well. For one who has tasted the narrations of the infinite Lord, what is the use of taking birth as a high-class Brahmana, or even as Lord Brahma himself? Commentary. Text 147 through 152, Bhagavatam 10:47, 58 through 63, were spoken by Sri Uddhava during his visit to Vrindavan. Because of his own solid reputation as an exalted Vaishnava, his testimony that the devotional service of the gopis is supreme is extremely credible. Uddhava is a favorite student of Brihaspati, the spiritual master of the demigods, and he is a trusted advisor to Krishna in Dwarka. Krishna himself praises Uddhava with enthusiasm. My dear Uddhava, O beloved of the Yadu dynasty, because you are my servant, well-wisher, and friend, I shall now speak to you the most confidential knowledge. Please hear as I explain these great mysteries to you. Bhagavatam 11:49. Among those entitled to the name Bhagavan, I am Vasudeva. And among the devotees, you indeed, Uddhava, represent me. Bhagavatam 11:16-29. My dear Uddhava, neither Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, Lord Sankarsana, nor the goddess of fortune, nor indeed my own self, is as dear to me as you. Bhagavatam 11:14-15. When Uddhava met with the gopis in Vrindavan, he used his diplomatic skill to deliver Krishna's message in a way that would relieve the agony the gopis felt in separation from Krishna. But after hearing the message, the gopis became even more deeply immersed in the ocean of their own distress. Uddhava was astonished by the extraordinary intensity of the gopis' attachment to Krishna. He had never seen or even heard of such pure devotional surrender. Therefore, just before leaving Vrindavan, Uddhava spoke these 6 verses in homage to the gopis and their pure devotion for Krishna. Here in the first of these verses, Uddhava declares the gopis greater than all aspirants for liberation, greater than all self-realized liberated saints, and greater than all other devotees of the personality of Godhead. Only the gopis, the goddesses of fortune who reside in the cowherd village of Sri Nanda, have realized the full potential of human life, Tano Brito Bhuvi. That these greatest of all Vaishnavas are human beings and residents of earth is fitting, because on higher planets like Swarga, the abode of Indra, the residents enjoy so much power and sense gratification that such love for Krishna is practically impossible for them to achieve. In other words, the demigods and sages living in the higher regions of the universe can hardly ever perfect their lives like the gopis of Braja. The words Tanu Brito Bhuvi, perfecting their lives on earth, can also be understood in another way. By sharing the rare gift of Prema Bhakti, the gopis deliver the fallen conditioned souls of this earth. In other words, the devotional lives of the inhabitants of earth are nourished by the gopis. The influence of the natural compassion and other virtues of the gopis is supremely beneficial for everyone, because the gopis possess the greatest possible love for the inner Lord of the inner Lord of all souls, the son of the king of the cowherds, the Lord who is famous as Govinda, because he is the Indra of the cows. I'll read that again. The influence of the natural compassion and other virtues of the gopis is supremely beneficial for everyone, because the gopis possess the greatest possible love for the inner Lord of all souls, the son of the king of the cowherds, the Lord who is famous as Govinda, because he is the Indra of the cows. Moreover, the gopis disregard everything else and love Govinda as the Lord of their hearts, their lover, their paramour. They enjoyed with Krishna the unprecedented Rasa Leela festival, and then, by displaying the all-attractive transformations of their viraha bhav, they deprived Uddhava of his wisdom by vanquishing his sobriety. For a long time, the gopis had quietly endured within their hearts the pain of separation from Krishna. But after hearing Krishna's message from Uddhava, they could no longer hold themselves back. Uddhava then became a witness to the uncontrollable waves of their complete distress. The ecstasy the gopis feel in separation from Krishna make the whole world cry in sympathy and brings Vaishnavas to the verge of death. In the obvious sense, Krishna is Nikhilatma, in that he is the soul of all beings. But in this verse, the phrase Nikhilatmani has another confidential meaning. He is also Nikhilatma, in that each gopi cherishes him as her very life and soul, literally her entire self, in a way that other devotees cannot imitate. No one loves Krishna as unconditionally as do the gopis. Mumukshus, renounced aspirants for liberation, fear material existence, and self-satisfied Vaishnava devotees of the Lord, who are liberated souls, muktas, are free from such fear, and both, in their own ways, understand Krishna to be the supreme goal and the supreme fruit of spiritual endeavors. The liberated Vaishnavas and the aspirants for liberation, who have the good fortune to get the mercy of those Vaishnavas, admire the love the gopis have for Krishna, but rarely do they attain it. Uddhava considers himself to be in the same category, a sincere servant of Krishna who can only admire the gopis' prema from a distance. But isn't Lord Brahma, rather than the gopis, the greatest of all Vaishnavas? Since he is the original guru for the path of devotional service, isn't he superior to all aspirants for liberation and to all liberated devotees. He sits on the seat of highest sovereignty in this universe, and he is endowed with many excellences. If the gopis are so exalted, then why didn't they accept births like his, in which they would have been worshipped by the whole world, rather than come to the earth as lowly cowherd women? Uddhava answers these questions by saying, Kim Brahma Janmabir Anantakata Rasasya. The term Anantakata refers to topics about the unlimited lords, Sri Krishna and Sri Balarama. Uddhava simply states that a Rasika Bhakta, a person who has a taste for hearing Anantakata, sees no use in becoming born as Lord Brahma, even numerous times. Such Rasika Bhaktas regard birth as Brahma as an obstacle to cultivating the taste for Anantakata, because such a birth creates various distractions, such as pride. Therefore the gopis, intent on tasting the honey found at Sri Govinda's lotus feet, would rather be born as simple daughters of cowherds than as such an exalted being as Lord Brahma. Alternatively, the rules of Sanskrit grammar allow kata rasasya to be split as kata arasasya, meaning for one who has no taste for hearing these topics. If someone has no interest in Anantakata, what can he gain by taking birth as the creator of the universe? Nothing of real value. Attraction to Anantakata is the real fruit of renunciation, liberation, and devotional practice. Thus, a person who lacks this taste cannot honestly be called a renunciant, a liberated sage, or a Vaishnava. Another way of looking at Uddhava's words is that he is explaining why the gopis, though on the highest level of self-realization, chose to abandon the norms of civilized behavior, the principles of Dharma taught by the Vedas. In this context, Brahma Janma can be interpreted to mean the appearance of Vedic knowledge within. For the gopis, or indeed for anyone who has a taste for the topics of the unlimited Lord, the presence of Vedic knowledge on the lips and in the heart is less important than attraction to Krishna Katha. Brahma can also be taken to signify knowledge of the pure self, and Janma to signify the means to generate this knowledge, namely the Vedas. In other words, a person who has realized Anantakata rasa has nothing to gain by Vedic study or theoretical knowledge, that he is spirit distinct from matter. And to a person who has no Anantakata rasa, of what use is Vedic study or knowledge of the self? Anantakata rasa is the only substantial result to be gained from studying the Vedas and inquiring into the identity of the self. Vedic study and self-realization are only means toward that final goal. Once one has reached the goal, one can put aside the means by which one got there, just as a person who has lit a lamp to find something in his room before going to sleep can put out the lamp and lay down to rest once he has found what he was looking for. Or just as one who was paid to take a boat across the river can forget about the boat after crossing. And conversely, when a person never attains the goal but remains stubbornly attached to the means, all he accomplishes is useless effort, as in beating empty husks of grain. A devotee situated in Anantakata rasa is therefore a superior person. Whether practicing the regulations of Vaidhi Bhakti or helplessly submerged in the ocean of rasa, he can never give up hearing and chanting about Krishna, and doing whatever promotes that hearing and chanting about Krishna. What to speak, then, of the gopis, those most fortunate of all women, who have the rarest quality of love for Sri Govinda? For them, ordinary Vedic cultural standards and the dry realizations of selfish meditation are of no value whatsoever. Text 148. How amazing it is that these simple women who wander about the forest, seemingly spoiled by wayward behavior, have achieved the perfection of unalloyed love for Krishna, the Supreme Soul. Indeed, it is true that the Supreme Lord Himself awards His blessings even to an ignorant worshipper, just as the best medicine works even when taken by a person ignorant of its ingredients. Commentary. It is obviously with irony that Uddhava speaks these words. He considers himself unqualified to have the company of the gopis, which he has achieved only by the undeserved mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. Contrasting himself with the gopis, Uddhava thinks that they are Krishna's dearmost devotees, whereas he has deviated in so many ways from the path of devotion. He has committed serious aparadhs, refused to carry out Krishna's instructions, and failed to develop confidence in the process of bhakti yoga. According to him, compared to the gopis, he is especially fallen. The gopis are roamers of the forest. In other words, their intense love for Krishna impels them to wander about the Vrindavan forest, where so many of his pastimes took place. And in the agony of separation from Krishna, they live in the most secluded part of the Vrindavan forest, where they wander about in the impassable wilderness. These transcendental goddesses of fortune in Sri Nanda's cowherd community are now totally helpless under the sway of their incomparable prema. Uddhava's life is nothing like that of the gopis. He is male and lives in a bustling metropolis, where his residence is fixed. He enjoys all comforts and is therefore unfit to wander about the Vrindavan forest. He is proud of knowing philosophically who Krishna is, and so cannot gain the topmost treasure, the gopis' love for Krishna. Thus Uddhava judges himself a most fallen wretch compared with the gopis, whose saintly qualities are inexhaustible. He thinks he will never deserve their association. Uddhava refers to himself in the plural, dushtaha, either because of the honor he gained by the slight association he had with the gopis in Vrindavan, or else because he speaks on behalf of Sri Narada and Akrura also. He does not refer to the gopis directly, but simply calls them these women, imaha, thus indicating the awe he feels in their presence. Certainly nowhere but in the hearts of the gopis can such elevated, pure love for Krishna be seen. And certainly, Uddhava thinks, only by the special power of devotional service to Krishna could such a foolish person as himself have had the privilege of witnessing the glories of the gopis. Krishna is Ishvara, the independent, supreme controller, free to give suitable rewards for any service done for him. He can reciprocate with his devotees however he wishes. He can shower his kindness even on an ignorant person who knows nothing of his greatness and the greatness of his servants. A person who sees devotees and devotional service with material vision, but who somehow has rendered a little service to one of his devotees. If any person, by approaching Krishna's devotee, takes even a slight step toward accepting service to Krishna, Krishna at once reciprocates with all kinds of assistance and blessings. Just as a powerful medicine is effective even on patients completely ignorant of its properties, the Lord's mercy acts on anyone who comes in touch with him. The word nanu, certainly, can alternatively be understood as two separate words, na, not, and nu, indeed. Indeed, because Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, whatever he wants to do, he can. And whatever he does, and whatever he does not want to do, he can refrain from. Or he can transform reality. In other words, he can undo any situation to change it to whatever he prefers. He has unlimited, all-powerful energies by which he fulfills all his desires. Thus, he can award the highest perfection of life to anyone, to the wise saint who worships him constantly without deviation, anubhajataha, to someone who has worshipped him irregularly, na anubhajataha, or even to someone who has never worshipped him, but has by some good fortune, or rather, come in touch with his devotees. And if Krishna wants, he can award the causeless mercy without delay, sakshat shreyas tanoti. He can make his mercy visible to all, not just a select few. He can make his mercy so obvious that one need not search for it by speculative philosophical conjectures. Krishna's mercy thus acts like a rare, most potent medicine, effective even if not swallowed and digested, but merely brought near the patient and smelled. Little kata for the doctors in the crowd. Text 149. When Lord Sri Krishna was dancing with the beautiful gopis of Braja in the Rasa Leela, the gopis were embraced by the arms of the Lord. This transcendental favor was never bestowed upon the goddess of fortune or other consorts in the spiritual world. Indeed, never was such a thing even imagined by the most beautiful girls in the heavenly planets, girls whose bodily luster and aroma resemble the beauty and fragrance of the lotus. And what to speak of worldly women who are very beautiful by mundane estimation. Commentary. Uddhava is astonished that although Mahalakshmi, the consort of Lord Narayana, is famous as his beloved, she cannot enjoy the Supreme Lord's favor in the same way as the gopis of Braja. If the Supreme Goddess of Fortune is less fortunate than the gopis, what can be said of everyone else? This verse has already been explained by Sri Narada Muni in an earlier chapter of Sri Brhad Bhagavatamrta 2.5, 189 through 191. Text 150, a short purport. Krishna's helping us here. Text 150. The gopis of Vrindavan have given up the association of their husbands, sons, and other family members who were very difficult to give up, and have forsaken the path of chastity to take shelter of the lotus feet of Mukunda, Krishna, which one should search for by Vedic knowledge. Oh, let me be so fortunate as to be one of the bushes, creepers, or herbs in Vrindavan, because the gopis trample them and bless them with the dust of their lotus feet. Commentary. By observing the glories of the gopis, by describing those glories in his own words, and by meeting the gopis in person, Uddhava is now completely absorbed in the gopis' special mood of loving Krishna. In this exalted state, he has now discovered his true heart's desire, which in this verse he prays to achieve as the final fruit of all the service he has done for Krishna. In his next life, he hopes to become any of the plants in Vrindavan who receive the dust from the gopis' feet. The enthusiasm Uddhava gains from expressing this wish inspires him to say more about the greatness of the gopis. For the service of Sri Mukunda's lotus feet, the gopis have abandoned things impossible for young women to give up: husbands, children, and other relatives, and the Vedic standards of behavior. Casting aside everything ordinarily precious, they have chosen to devote themselves utterly to Mukunda Padavim, the lotus feet of Krishna. Or, understanding Padavim in its more literal sense of footpath, every day the gopis eagerly go out, morning and evening, to watch the path Krishna will use to go to the forest and return. Or else, Mukunda Padavim is the spiritual path of Bhakti Yoga. The yogis have abandoned their families and religious principles just to engage in Krishna's service, even without expecting to obtain him. For such unique surrender, they should be acknowledged as supremely glorious. But why have these gopis, whose feet are worshipped by all respectable persons, set a bad example by abandoning the noble life of dedication to their husbands and fathers? Why have they defied the authority of the Vedas in this way? Uddhava answers that the Vedas themselves consider devotional service to Krishna the most important goal in life and aspire for the service of Sri Mukunda's lotus feet. The word vimrigyam, indicates that the Vedas can only strive to achieve the prema of the gopis, not achieve it. Therefore, even though the Vedas are the teachers of all principles of religion and spiritual knowledge, it is perfectly fitting that the gopis take no heed of Vedic authority, and in fact abandon the Vedic principles for the sake of obtaining the most precious thing, something the Vedas themselves can hardly obtain. Indeed, for the gopis to observe the religious principles upon which their families insist would only prevent the gopis from properly worshipping the lotus feet of Mukunda. Indeed, I'll read that again. Indeed, for the gopis to observe the religious principles upon which their families insist would only prevent the gopis from properly worshipping the lotus feet of Mukunda. On this matter, Lord Krishna has given his own opinion. Trigunya Vishaya Veda, Nishtrigunyo Bhavarjana. Imagine, this is in the Gita. This is the Gita. ABCs. The Vedas deal mainly with the subject of the three modes of material nature. O Arjuna, become transcendental to those three modes. Bhagavad Gita 2:45. And here in the Brhad Bhagavatamrta, we have just read in text 147, Uddhava's own words from Srimad Bhagavatam 10:47-58. Kim Brahma Janmavir Anantakatha Rasasya. For one who has tasted the narrations of the infinite Lord, what is the use of taking birth as a high-class Brahmana, or even as Lord Brahma himself? In other words, any real attraction to the topics of Lord Ananta exempts one from having to follow the Vedic injunctions that regulate thought and behavior. The gopis, moreover, have earned this exemption even more certainly than have others, because the only desire the gopis have is to follow the path of their beloved Mukunda. Alternatively, Uddhava's statement may be understood as his answer to another doubt. The Vedas, the Shrutis, are the supreme object of reverence even for Brahma and the other demigods who achieved their knowledge from the Vedas. This we hear from the very words of the Shrutis themselves. How then are the gopis justified in disregarding the Vedic injunctions? In response to this query, Uddhava says that the scope of Vedic authority is limited to the field of ordinary religious life, whereas the gopis have completely transcended that jurisdiction by taking exclusive shelter of Krishna. The Vedas can merely seek Krishna, but the gopis already possess him. In the opinion of some authorities, the Upanishads earned the right to become gopis out of intense hankering to worship Krishna in the gopis' special mood of prema. But this should be rejected as an untenable theory. Why? Because the Upanishads are inferior in devotion even to the goddess Lakshmi. Thus the Upanishads, on their own merit, do not deserve the good fortune of becoming gopis. Only on the strength of Krishna's special mercy could any of them ever attain that perfection. Text 151. Although the goddess of fortune herself and Lord Brahma and all the other demigods have realized all their desires and are masters of yogic perfection, they can worship the lotus feet of Krishna only within their purified minds. But during the rasa dance, Lord Krishna placed his feet upon these gopis' breasts, and by embracing those feet, the gopis gave up all sorrow. Commentary. Aren't all devotees of Krishna equally glorious for renouncing their families and whatever else prevents them from approaching Krishna? Yes, but the intimacy of the gopis' surrender makes them special. Krishna's lotus feet are worshipped by the goddess of fortune with all the opulence at her command. She serves her Lord's feet by massaging them, and she attends him in various other ways. Brahma, Rudra, Indra, and other demigods also worship Krishna's feet, and so do the Mahat Tattva and the other elements of creation. The demigods and the elements over which the demigods preside worship Krishna's feet by performing Vedic sacrifices and carrying out his orders. Self-satisfied liberated sages also worship with devotion those same feet, aiming at them as the supreme goal of life. The great masters of Bhakti Yoga worship his lotus feet within their purified hearts by hearing and chanting Krishna's glories with pure love. But the worship performed by all these elevated souls, with the exception of the goddess Lakshmi, is for the most part only mental. Rarely does Krishna grant his darshan to these demigods, sages, and devotees. The gopis' worship of Krishna's lotus feet is much more intimate. The words Krishnasya tad Bhagavata indicate this intimacy. The pronoun tat, that, implies that even before the rasa dance, the gopis were already intimately familiar with the supreme beauty of Krishna's feet. And after Krishna left the gopis, at the very beginning of the Rasa Leela, they spent some time vividly remembering those very feet in the ecstasy of separation. Though these were the same lotus feet worshipped by Sri, the goddess of fortune, the gopis realized them in a special way as the feet of the darling young son of Yashoda and Nanda. The lotus feet of the gopis repeatedly held to their breasts during the rasa dance were thus the most excellent embodiment of all beauty. By holding Krishna's feet in this way, the gopis were completely relieved of the pain of separation. Certainly, then, the gopis are the greatest devotees, because they worship Krishna's feet not merely by meditating on them, but by holding them physically in their embrace. Because the feet they worshipped were the feet of the Supreme Lord in the form of Krishna, the gopis are superior to the demigods headed by Brahma. Because the gopis touched those feet directly, the gopis are superior to the self-satisfied sages. Because the gopis held those feet to their breasts, the gopis are superior to the masters of yoga. And because the association of the gopis with Krishna occurred during the Rasa Leela, the gopis are superior even to Mahalakshmi. As Uddhava describes how the devotees during the Rasa dance obtained relief from the distress of separation, he harbors the concern that the feelings of separation the gopis suffer now are much more serious. Now that Krishna has left them to go to Mathura, Uddhava doubts whether even a skillfully delivered message from Krishna can do much to console them. Although Uddhava has done his best, the effect will most likely be negligible. But in any case, he himself has been deeply affected by his meeting with the gopis. He has imbibed the spirit of their special prema, and in that mood, he has prayed to take birth in Braja, as in any form of life, be it a bush or other planet, that may be touched by the dust of the gopis' divine feet. Because Uddhava could properly value and learn from the love of the gopis, it was him Krishna chose to carry the message to Vrindavan. Like Uddhava, Srila Shukadeva Goswami took to his own heart the gopis' mood of devotion to Krishna. At the end of the 10th canto, Srila Shukadeva expresses this mood when he praises Krishna's Dwarka queens. How could one possibly describe the great austerities performed by these women who perfectly served him, the spiritual master of the universe, in pure ecstatic love? Thinking of him as their husband, they rendered such intimate services as massaging his feet. Bhagavatam 10:90-27. Even though Srila Shukadeva, while speaking this verse, uses the term Bhartri, husband, rather than Jara, paramour, he is actually thinking of the gopis of Braja and burning in the fire of their ecstasy. But he dares not mention this out of fear that in ecstasy he would lose his self-control. Even in modern times, and even among men, there are great devotees who are known to have attained pure love for Krishna in the mood of the gopis. No one should doubt this, thinking that for male devotees, the mood of the gopis is incompatible. Anyone well versed in the epics and Puranas will know the example of the austere sages of the Dandaka forest. When the sages saw the beauty of Sri Raghunath, Lord Ramachandra, they became attracted in the conjugal mood and wanted to enjoy having him as their husband. In the Uttarakanda of Sri Padma Purana, Lord Shiva, speaking to his wife Parvati, describes that history. When they saw Lord Hari in the beautiful form of Ramachandra, they at once wanted to enjoy him. Thus they all took birth as women in Gokula, and by their lusty attraction to Lord Hari, obtained him as their husband. In this way, they granted liberation from the ocean of material existence. In this way, they gained liberation from the ocean of material existence. The Kurma Mahapurana also states, by performing austerities, the wise sons of Agni took birth as women and obtained as their husband Lord Vasudeva, the unborn and unlimited source of creation. Text 152. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Again and again, I offer my respects to the dust from the feet of the women of Nanda Maharaja's cowherd village. When these gopis loudly chant the glories of Sri Krishna, the vibration purifies the three worlds. Commentary. After thus taking great satisfaction from sweetly singing the glories of the gopis, Uddhava falls flat on the ground, on the very path their lotus feet have touched. Picking up a speck of dust from the path, he places it on his head, as if it were the rarest treasure in the universe. And after offering again his prostrate obeisance, he recites this final prayer. Uddhava is absorbed in ecstasy, so much so that even though he can see the gopis, he speaks and offers homage to them with deep reverence, as if they were not present. Obviously, he feels sublime pleasure in chanting their glories. The most ecstatic kind of Sankirtan, however, is that chanted by the gopis themselves. Their loud songs purify all the worlds, including the upper, lower, and middle planetary systems. Sri Shukadeva Goswami has described this earlier in his narration of Uddhava's visit to Vrindavan. As the ladies of Braja loudly sang the glories of lotus-eyed Krishna, their songs, blended with the sound of their churning, ascended to the sky and dissipated everything inauspicious in every direction. Bhagavatam 10:46-46. Uddhava also implies that any suitable praise of the gopis, such as the prayers he has just sung, is in fact the most excellent form of Harikatha. Such glorification can easily purify the three worlds, as Uddhava hoped to do by speaking these verses. Text 153. My dear gopis, what auspicious activities must the flute have performed to enjoy the nectar of Krishna's lips independently and leave only a taste for us gopis, for whom that nectar is all actually meant. The forefathers of the flute, the bamboo trees, shed tears of pleasure. His mother, the river on whose bank the bamboo was born, feels jubilation, and therefore her blooming lotus flowers are standing like hair on her body. Commentary. Now that Parikshit Maharaj has sung the praises of the young gopis of Braja, he turns his attention to the most excellent of those gopis, the blessed Sri Radha, whose ecstatic love for Krishna is so deep that mere words cannot do it justice. King Parikshit remembers how Srimati Radharani constantly hankers to drink the nectar of Sri Krishna's lips, so much so that when she hears Krishna's flute song from a distance as he enters the Vrindavan forest, she imagines the flute to be tasting that nectar as it touches his lips. Thinking that like that, she begins to envy the flute as if it were a rival lover. As her girlfriends stand and talk about Krishna, Srimati Radharani then interjects this comment of her own. Bhagavatam 10:21-9, which Parikshit Maharaj now chooses to recite. Sri Radha, addressing her friends, headed by Lalita, asks what good deeds this flute, this lifeless piece of wood, could have done to earn the blessing of enjoying the nectar from Krishna's lips. If she could find out what the flute has done, the gopis could also do it and obtain the same favor. After all, the nectar of Krishna's lips belonged to them, not the flute. Sri Radhika doesn't specifically say that the nectar is theirs to enjoy, but says only that the nectar is theirs, because she feels too shy to speak so explicitly. The flute may have the right to rest in the hand of his master Damodar, or be held to Damodar's chest, or even his lips. But when that flute dares drink as much as he likes of the intoxicating nectar of Krishna's lips, that flute is being too bold. Because Sri Radha and her friends are members of the cowherd community and therefore have a close relationship with Krishna, they can claim ownership of the nectar from Krishna's lips. The flute is an outsider. If he continues the audacity of drinking this nectar, the gopis will have to steal him and take him to some secret place for safekeeping. Otherwise, the flute will take all the nectar himself, leaving only the remnants of its fragrance for the gopis. The rivers are like the flute's mothers, because their milk-like water enabled the flute to grow to its present size. When the rivers contemplate the success of their son, the groves of lotuses growing in their waters bloom like hair on their bodies, standing jubilantly erect. And the bamboo trees in whose family the flute was born are so proud of him that they shed a downpour of ecstatic tears in the form of sweet sap. Their skin erupts in goosebumps, and they cry profusely like venerable elders of a clan who see one of their children become a servant of the personality of Godhead. The phrase avashishta rasam has several possible meanings. One is that the flute enjoys all the nectar of Krishna's lips, leaving not a drop for anyone else. Another is that as much as the flute drinks, his thirst, rasa or raga, remains unquenched, and being frustrated, he cannot stop drinking more and more. A third meaning is that the gopis, having rejected all material tastes, rasa, and having thus lost all interest in sense gratification in this life and the next, are attracted only to the taste of the nectar from Krishna's lips. And the flute, knowing this well, still deprives them of that nectar by drinking it himself. A more complex explanation of avashishta rasam may be understood as follows. How fortunate this flute must be! The Yamuna and the other rivers of Braja, who purify all the worlds by providing arrangements for bathing and other auspicious activities, are satisfied to partake of the mere remnants of nectar that Krishna's flute has left behind as dry pulp. Connoisseurs of devotional poetry know very well how the rivers of Braja, during the water sports enjoyed by Krishna and the gopis, obtained some of the nectar from Krishna's lips, Adaramrita. Or perhaps only one of the rivers, Sri Kalindi Devi, Yamuna, is allowed to drink that Adaramrita directly. And the other rivers in Sri Vrindavan Dham receive remnants from her, an opportunity they have earned by residing in the abode of Krishna's pastimes. After tasting even the smallest drop of the nectar that remains, all the rivers feel transcendental bliss, and their bodily hairs stand on end. And since the rivers become ecstatic just to have a drop of that nectar, how pious must be Krishna's flute to be able to drink as much as he wants. By providing shade and fruits for everyone, the pipala and other trees on the banks of Vraja's rivers are like the elders of a noble family who perform auspicious service for others. Those trees cry unhappy tears because they cannot receive the nectar from Krishna's lips. We may wonder why the trees cannot share this nectar, or may doubt whether trees should be crying in disappointment when they don't receive it. After all, a beggar may be sorry to have nothing to eat, but he shouldn't lament that he can't rule a kingdom. This doubt is dispelled by knowledge that the trees of Braja are Aryans, great saints. As exalted devotees of Sri Krishna, the trees are moved to tears by sadness when they don't obtain Krishna's Adaramrita, even though they have no right to claim it. Or, taking another meaning of the words Arya, the ones crying in frustration are the mothers-in-law and other respectable elders of Sri Radha. Text 154. Lord Krishna, Lord Sri Krishna, the ultimate resort of all living entities, is also known as Devaki Nandana, or Yashoda Nandana, the son of Devaki and Yashoda. He is the guide of the Yadu dynasty, and with his mighty arms he kills everything inauspicious and every man who is impious. By his presence he destroys all misfortune for all living entities, moving and inert. His blissful smiling face always increases the lusty desires of the gopis of Vrindavan. May he be all glorious and happy. Commentary. Sri Parikshit Maharaj recited several verses of Srimad Bhagavatam to glorify, generally and specifically, the residents of Gokula. Now, to conclude properly and invoke auspiciousness, he glorifies the supremacy of the personality of Godhead by again repeating the words of his own spiritual master, Shukadeva Goswami. Just as Agastya Rishi drank from his palm the entire salt ocean, the divine Shukadeva spoke this verse in an effort to drink from his own palm the entire ocean of Krishna's pastimes described in the Bhagavatam's 10th canto. Srila Shukadeva places this verse 10:90:48 near the very end of the canto as a complete synopsis of the pastimes discussed in several thousand verses. The verse that immediately precedes this is in the Bhagavatam mentioned Krishna explicitly, and Krishna's glories are the focus of this part of Shukadeva's narrative. Thus, even though the present verse does not mention Krishna by name, it is obviously about him. Just as Parikshit Maharaj sang the praises of different Brajabasis in order of their relative importance, Shukadeva here tells of 6 special aspects of Sri Krishna's super excellence in order of their increasing importance. First, Krishna is Nirvasa, the residence, shelter, and foundation of all living beings. He also resides as the supersoul within their hearts. And he is manifest externally, especially among his janas, or favorite devotees, in the forms of his numerous incarnations. Thus, he is the supreme Brahman, the supreme Atma, the Lord of all, the seed of all avatars. Second, Krishna displayed the extreme limit of his manifold opulence in the respectful words he spoke to his father and mother at the time of his birth, when he described the reason for his birth as their son and his desire to be carried to Gokula. By this unprecedented revelation of the purpose of his descent, he proved himself the most generous bestower of benedictions and the most compassionate protector of his parents. And by ordering Vasudeva to carry him to Gokula, Krishna showed his intention to distribute far and wide the most precious treasure of prema. Third, by having the most excellent yadus as his companions and servants, Krishna further demonstrates the supreme opulence of his appearance. As Sri Yadavendra, Krishna puts to an end the distress of his dear servants, the yadus, and secures their happiness by killing wicked enemies of their clan, like Kamsa and Jarasandha. Thus he shows his absolute concern for his devotees. The phrase Yadu Vada Parishat indicates that Krishna is served by the exalted members of the Yadu dynasty, or, since the word Parishat carries the meaning assembly, we can understand the phrase to mean that Krishna brought down to the earth the Sudharma assembly hall of the demigods, making it the court of the king of the Yadus, Ugrasena. The Sudharma hall is but one of many treasures of heaven, including the Parijata tree that Krishna brought to the earth. Thus, Krishna, by defeating the demigods on several occasions, displayed his supreme power and opulence. And by giving the royal assembly hall to Ugrasena, his father of his arch enemy Kamsa, the Lord displayed his causeless, unequaled kindness. Fourth, although Krishna could have effortlessly done away with the causes of irreligion simply by using his supreme will to create pleasurable pastimes for his devotees, he killed the demonic opponents of religion by using his mighty arms. Arms long, well-developed, beautifully shaped, adorned with armlets and other ornaments, and bearing weapons like his Sudarshan disc. As described in Sri Harivangsha's narration of Krishna's battle with Banasura, when fighting such enemies, Krishna would sometimes, for the special delight of select devotees, manifest 4 arms instead of 2. Therefore, Shukadev uses the plural form Dorbhihi instead of the dual form Dorbhyam, which is normally used to indicate only 2 arms. Or understanding the word arms another way, devotees who assisted Krishna, such as the Pandavas, acted as his arms. Krishna used these Kshatriyas, originally born from his arms, to kill envious enemies and uproot the power of irreligion. Of course, Krishna, by his mere desire, could have killed Jarasandha and all the other wicked kings who opposed him, but out of fatherly compassion, he chose to share his fame with his devotees. Fifth, while enjoying his pastimes in Gokula, Krishna expanded the fullness of his loving devotional service. Although the pastimes Krishna performed in Mathura and Dwarka occurred after his pastimes in Gokula, they are mentioned in inverse order because Krishna's excellences are most completely manifest in Gokula. Krishna generously bestowed his prema bhakti on all the residents of Vrindavan, including even the non-moving beings such as creepers, bushes, and trees. What to speak of the moving creatures, down to even the insects and microbes. Disregarding their lack of qualifications, he gave them the gift of loving devotion to himself, which automatically destroys all the troubles of material existence. Or, from another angle, just as the happiness available in heaven is an impediment for those who want liberation, the happiness of liberation is an impediment for those who want loving devotional service to Krishna. That distressful obstacle, that so-called happiness, Krishna effortlessly destroys for all the devotees spontaneously attracted to him in Vrindavan and elsewhere in Brajabhumi. Simply by expanding his prema bhakti throughout Brajabhumi, Krishna delivers the moving and non-moving residents of Braja from the miseries of both material entanglement and impersonal liberation. Indeed, when Krishna expanded the flood of love of God in Braja, all moving and non-moving living beings in the three worlds were relieved of the unhappiness of material existence. Just as a fire lit for the sake of cooking also dispels cold and darkness, the spread of Krishna Bhakti automatically freed all living beings from material miseries as a secondary result. In fact, when Krishna descended to Gokula on earth, he freed all his devotees throughout the universe from attraction to liberation, which they may obtain as easily as yogis obtain wonderful cities. This freedom was an automatic byproduct of the unalloyed prema displayed in Brajabhumi. But even though all devotees in the universe were thus freed, the devotees living in Braja during Krishna's pastimes gained the fullest relief from the dangers of liberation and material entanglement. Finally, sixth, Krishna most fully reveals his greatest glories, his fascinating beauty, charm, and cleverness in his pastimes with the young gopis of Braja. During Krishna's presence, Brajabhumi becomes like an opulent city, Pura, bustling with Krishna's many different pastimes and romantic dalliances. Krishna's lovely smiling face, decorated by his flute and various ornaments, enchants the women living in Braja. The god of love, Kamadev, is called Deva because he is brilliantly radiant, divyati. The beauty of Krishna's face gives Kamadev unlimited power over the gopis, a power that conquers the attractions of material life and transcends even the attraction of liberation. Cupid is famous for spoiling the self-interests of everyone he influences. But for the gopis of Braja, Cupid destroys the bonds of material existence. He helps the gopis bring Sri Krishna under their control and assumes for them the forms of mukti and bhakti. Thus Cupid arranges for the gopis to realize Krishna in his full glory and enjoy his company as ever fresh at every moment. Attraction to Krishna in the mood of the gopis may itself be called Kamadev, the god of all love, because the most excellent form of desire is that which focuses unconditionally on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Only such single-pointed desire evolves into the most exalted state of pure love. The word Deva also indicates the idea of play. Taken in that sense, it indicates that in pastimes of intimate enjoyment, the beauty of Krishna's face expands the play of Cupid among the gopis. The beauty of Krishna's face has a powerful effect on the gopis, much to his delight. It makes them forget the four goals of life and raises them to the highest level of pure prema, which is the mature fruit of all devotional endeavors. In this way, Krishna's smiling face represents the ultimate greatness of the Supreme Person, the magnificence of his charm, his beauty, and his expertise in loving affairs. It is not without reason that Srikadeva Goswami uses the word Vardhayan, increasing, in the present tense. It expresses the fact that Krishna's pastimes go on eternally in Brajabhumi. In Srimad Bhagavatam 10:44-13, the women of Mathura also use the present tense to describe Krishna's sporting in Vrindavan even after he has moved to Mathura. Prakridayan chati giritra ramar chati tangri. He whose feet is worshipped by Lord Shiva and the goddess Rama is wandering about in Vrindavan, enacting his many pastimes. The fact of Krishna's eternal presence in Vrindavan is upheld by many statements of scripture and by the personal experience of many unalloyed devotees. As stated in Srimad Bhagavatam 10:1-28, Mathura Bhagavan yatra nityam sanihito harihi. Mathura is very intimately connected with Krishna, for Krishna lives there eternally. The word Pura suggests the city of Mathura, and indeed, Krishna increases the influence of Cupid for both the women of Vraja and the women of Mathura city. But the mention of the city more confidentially implies that when Krishna goes away to Mathura, the gopis become immersed in the agony of separation. It is then that they achieve the highest limit of prema, and therefore Srila Shukadev, even after glorifying Krishna's sports with the gopis in Gokula, has alluded to his going to Mathura. In summary, the same Supersoul who resides in the hearts of all living beings took up residence in the womb of Devaki. As the Supersoul, he is the only passive, indwelling supervisor, but as the son of Devaki, he speaks and reciprocates with her in many loving ways. The mighty heroes of the Yadava dynasty are the Supreme Lord's servants, and they are able to defeat all the forces of evil. Still, the Lord chooses to use his own two arms to kill opposing kings. He also destroys the sins and miseries of all moving and non-moving creatures. But with the gopis, he acts in a seemingly contrary way. Although they are married to other men, he incites in them the influence of Cupid and becomes their paramour. Thus he only increases their shame and misery. The gopis themselves are not at fault in this, because it is the beauty of Krishna's face that causes their predicament. By thus presenting so many alternative understandings, Srila Sukadeva Goswami proves beyond any doubt the super excellence of Krishna and his wonderful qualities, such as his compassionate concern for his devotees. Text 155. Sri Janamejaya said, I am all successful. I am all successful. For you, the Lord, O Lord, O spiritual master, having given me the opportunity to relish the secret glories of Goloka. I will repeat that again to make sure that Gauranga Madhava can hear it. Sri Janamejaya said, I am all successful. I am all successful. For you, O Lord, O spiritual master, have given me the opportunity to relish the secret glories of Goloka. Commentary. King Janamejaya, having received from Jaimini Rishi everything he asked, is fully satisfied. He repeats himself, Kritartosmi, Kritartosmi, out of extreme joy and the firm conviction that he has achieved his goal. Addressing Sri Jaimini, he uses the word Bhagavan because he reveres Jaimini, his guru, as equal to God, and is grateful for the mercy Jaimini has shown him. Text 156. Sri Jaimini said, My dear boy, what you say is true. Anyone who hears or chants or meditates upon this narrative with devotion will achieve the abode of the Supreme. Commentary. Sri Jaimini is also very much satisfied to hear his disciples' words, filled as they are with the pure spirit of prema. From what Janamejaya has said, Sri Jaimini can discern that this disciple has properly assimilated what he has heard. Thus Jaimini answers him affectionately, calling him Tata, my dear boy. Janamejaya was correct to say that now his life was successful because he had listened carefully to Jaimini's narrative about the glories of Goloka. Simply by hearing or chanting this narration with devotion, or thinking about it deeply, anyone can achieve that most inaccessible of divine abodes. And if one engages seriously in the regulative practice meant for attaining Goloka, then certainly one will achieve success. Jaimini is confident, therefore, that the disciple has now fulfilled his goal in life by having heard these glories, and that he himself has fulfilled his own goal of having recited them. The auspicious fruits of hearing and chanting this narrative have thus been definitely assured. Text 157. Obeisances to him, the son of the blessed king of the cowherds, who is always astir with causeless compassion, who on his own initiative impels his servant to develop devotion to him, and who then becomes fully satisfied, as if his devotee were being very kind to him. Wow. Commentary. Coming to the end of his narration, Sri Jaimini Rishi remembers the supreme kindness of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and offers at his lotus feet this entire effort. Nirupadi Kripa Kulaya can be understood in two ways. Krishna is full of many different kinds of causeless compassion, Kripa Kula. Or Krishna, without any selfish motive, is always keen to do something beneficial, Kripa Akula. Sri Jaimini calls Krishna the son of the king of the cowherds, either out of great respect or out of shyness. Since Jaimini now shares the mood of the gopis, he is shy to mention Nanda Maharaj, a respectable elder, by name. Krishna is the best of all spiritual instructors, both internally as the Supersoul and externally as a Vaishnava spiritual master. He bestows knowledge and everything else required for advancing on the path of devotional service. As Uddhava described to Krishna in the 11th canto, Bhagavatam 11:29-6, O my Lord, transcendental poets and experts in spiritual science would not be able to fully express their indebtedness to you, even if they were endowed with the prolonged lifetime of Brahma. For you appear in two features, externally as the Acharya and internally as the Supersoul, to deliver the embodied living being by directing him how to come to you. Whatever Jaimini has spoken to Janamejaya, therefore, has been inspired by Krishna, either directly or on the strength of instructions imparted by Krishna's representative, the spiritual master. Thus it is fitting for Jaimini to offer the fruits of his labor to Krishna, the Supreme Soul, because Krishna is the most compassionate friend of all living beings and is their original spiritual master. Krishna, without regard for spiritual qualifications and abilities, tries to engage everyone in devotional service to him. He tries to engage all the senses of everyone in devotional practices, beginning with hearing and chanting of his glories. And when he sees some positive response from a conditioned soul, Krishna becomes extremely pleased. He then showers all favors on the candidate for his service. The gratitude is mutual, just as people in general are satisfied with someone who significantly helps them. All of Krishna's devotees are ever thankful to the Lord, and when Krishna sees his devotees practicing devotional service, he considers them his most gracious benefactors. Hare Krishna. To end the Digdarshani commentary on the Brhad Bhagavatamrta, Srila Sanatana Goswami offers this prayer. May the Supreme Lord, in his form of Sri Chaitanya, who personally made me take up the labor of this writing, be always pleased. The Lord, renowned by the name Chaitanya, is Shriman, the possessor of all divine opulences. He is Lord Krishna himself, appearing as the son of Sachidevi. Or Srimad Chaitanya Rupa can refer to the most fortunate servant of Lord Chaitanya, Srila Rupa Goswami. Describing Srila Rupa Goswami as Bhagavan is appropriate according to this definition of the term. One is called Bhagavan who knows the future and fortune, the birth and rebirth, the ignorance and enlightenment of all beings. Thus, both to the Lord and to that best of Vaishnavas, Srila Rupa Goswami, Srila Sanatana offers his respects. Thus ends the 7th chapter of part 2 of Srila Sanatana Goswami's Brhad Bhagavatamrta, entitled Jagadananda, the bliss of the worlds. Thus ends part 2. This translation was completed at Sri Purushottam Kshetra on June 30th, 1999, on the occasion of Lord Jagannath's Snan Yatra. Sri Brhad Bhagavatamrta ki jai, Srila Sanatana Goswami ki jai, Sri Rupa Goswami ki jai, Sri Radha Krishna ki jai, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's Gaur Premanande, Hari Hari Bo. We finished it. We did it. A little late, but better late than never, as they say. So, anyway, I just received the highest benediction one can get because I just recited this book all the way through. Yeah. So, Hare Krishna, thank you very much, Srila Prabhupada. Thank you very much, Sri Gopiparanadhana Prabhu and Jai Dvaita Swami, my mentor in editing. He finished the translation in 1999. We finished the editing in 2004. 5 years it took to edit this book. So anything worth doing is worth doing right. Hare Krishna. May we all achieve devotion at the lotus feet of Srimati Radharani, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Hare Krishna. So I don't have time to have reflections tonight because it's 8:40 already, and my doctor's over there going like this, shaking his head, nodding his head rather, because we have to get up and go early tomorrow morning to the hospital, and then I'm going to, have an experience, transcendental experience, getting my second hip replaced so that I can normally walk. So, but anyway, this is the real thing. And I thank all of you who have the taste to come every night, especially those who've actually been there every night. Probably not very many, but there's a deep connection between the tongue of those who are reciting and the ears of those who are hearing. So in the same spirit that has been described to us in this last part of Brhad Bhagavatamrta, I'd like to offer my humble obeisances to the hearers, just as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, just as Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami at the end of the Chaitanya Charitamrita offered his humble obeisances to his hearers, because he said that his life is, I think, worth living or is complete because they have received this message. Hare Krishna. Brhad Bhagavatamrta ki jai. Samabeda Bhakta Brinda ki jai. Gaur Premanandi Hari Hari Bol. Now I bet everyone's wondering what I'm going to read next. Thought about that? So I will announce it formally tonight, so you'll have something to wait for, to anticipate. I'm going to read the Krishna book all the way through. Next, Hare Krishna. See you when I see you. I can't say tomorrow night like usual because I don't know how long it's going to be until I can sit on a chair. Hare Krishna. See you soon. Hare Bol.